everything from the definition of money. We heard on Samson's talk about how money was a store of value first, how it was used because of barter. Bullshit. Very simple. It was never used in barter, and it was never a store of value. In fact, that is a common little myth that floats around places like Wikipedia and whatever else. Yes, I actually have multiple doctorates, and one of them is computer science and economics. So I have a little bit of knowledge about economics. I've also got a master's degree in econometrics, and God, I've got 10 masters, so I won't list them all and bore you. Now, at the end of the day, what do we have? We've got money. What is money? Early forms of money were credit. At the end of the day, there was some form of doing that. It's all stored value. But stored value not as a store of value, but as a means of exchanging value. So we're going to talk a little bit about these things and open up some of the things about Bitcoin so that you can understand, because the power of Bitcoin is within Bitcoin. That's our big lie we've been told. We've been told, oh, Bitcoin's broken, right back from selfish mining and all these other things. All the lies designed to take away the power of Bitcoin and basically tell you that it needs to be fixed, that a bunch of technocrats need to fix it. Centrally planned, because we can do better. We can make it better. We can just sit there like every other technocrat and make it better. So we're going to first of all talk about different network forms. Everyone sits there and goes centralized, 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 except not a single person I've seen saying that has a bloody clue what the frick centralized means. Centrality in network theory has to do with the number of edges to vertices. Quite frankly, Bitcoin has become far more centralized. Why? Because of the way that it's been distributed as a mesh. Bitcoin Cash and others will remain not centralized, and we'll get there more over time. And I'll give you some demonstrations. In the next weeks, months, etc., we're putting together a whole lot of videos, animations, everything from something my grandmother will understand, right up to mathematical equations, all the rest, so that you can say it's technobabble. But all of it will link in so that you can link my technobabble to something you can show to your 3-year-old and have them understand. So, first of all, I'll talk about an overlay network. Bitcoin is an overlay network. It works because it sits over top of anything else. It doesn't matter whether you have Blockstream's really slow satellite network that actually uses the technology of the same equipment that I was using in the 90s, except cheaper and better. It doesn't matter if you have something like text, something like Cointext, some method such as the Twitter bot to send everything, as long as you can send data. Because one of the issues that you get told is that you need to run a full node and verify everything. No, you don't. No, you can't. You can sit there and verify things if you want, but you don't actually do anything as a node unless you are a full node. And a full node, if you read the white paper, mines. You vote with CPU power, which is now ASICs. So Bitcoin works because of these little squiggly lines here called math, and this formation of what is called a supernode, a superpeer, or a giant network, depending on the particular area you're talking about in either epidemiology, in network graph theory, computer science, very similar concepts, and at the same time, we have a central force that is not centralized. That's a big distinction. As I've said earlier, you would need billions of civils right now to compromise the network on Bitcoin. Some of these things like selfish mining, where they talk about gamma, you actually have a negative gamma. The more civils you put out there, the slower your selfish miner becomes. You actually help the honest miners by attacking the network. There's a reason for this. This is what happens as Bitcoin forms, as machines turn on. Looks like a little petri dish full of bacteria, whatever else forming. But what happens over time is every node on the system is incentivized to connect to as many as possible. Miners want to get their transactions out quickly. Not one, not two, everything. So back in 2002, there was a lot of work by Strogwitz, etc., on small world networks. These are forms of near-complete graph. We have the percolation as that occurs. What we see here is not one or two. We have occasional Raspberry Pis out here. Like, here's our little Raspberry Pi on the edge of the network, basically useless and doing nothing, compared to the center of the network there that is densely interconnected. If you're a merchant, if you're Coinbase, you connect to everyone. It is in your interest to. Because if you have those nanoseconds difference, you lose money. If you're a miner, every second counts. One of the things people don't understand is it is not a linear system. That means there are not equal numbers of 20-minute and 4-minute blocks. There are more 4-minute blocks, way more 4-minute blocks than there are 20-minute blocks. That is the nature of an exponential distribution. Lots, little. That's how it works. Over time, what we see is a dense, highly interconnected, basically group of nodes that connect to every other node on the network. On a ring format, this is the same thing. So our miners connect everywhere. Because as a miner, if you can spend a little bit more money getting that much maligned $20,000 node I talked about, not your Raspberry Pi, it pays you up to $2 million benefit for the $100 million miner, which is not huge now. So that additional bit of hardware returns your money 100 times. I'm sorry, anyone who runs a business and realizes they can get a 100-time return on money, anyone as a business person have a guaranteed 100 return on money, 100x, put your hand up if you won't take that opportunity. Well, I got one, but that's fine. There's always one. Compare that to Lightning. Lightning and other things, and how people think Bitcoin work, is a mesh. This is how propagation happens around the Lightning network. Basically, notice as we're waiting here, and say we've got something on the other side of the globe, eventually it'll get there. So, we've sent our transaction, and we're up the other side of the earth, and it's really nearly instant, eventually. I'm sure it will be instant. Oh, here it goes. There we go. Instant, sort of. Not. Bitcoin is that. That is the actual sort of model of how Bitcoin works. It is hugely degree-centered. As it forms, everything falls into a tight ball. Every machine connects to everything it can. It is known as what is effectively called near complete. You connect as much as possible as a miner because you're incentivized to. Now, what this actually means is we start connecting all over the place. So we are resilient because we connect everywhere. So here we have our network structure. We have our miners and our users, and they're all connected in a big mesh. It's a small world network mesh though. So when people start getting there, and we even have a few disconnected areas because we're going to say it's early on and not where Bitcoin is now, we have our users there, and someone will send a transaction. Once that transaction propagates around the network, they go to multiple parties. So the user sends, and you'll notice the miners now nearly simultaneously have that, and then bang to the rest of the miners. The network distance in Bitcoin is 1.32 plus or minus 0.7. And I'm sure a few people who actually understand graph theory will understand that a distance of under 2 is remarkably small. What it means is we send a transaction and it just gets there. Bam, sent, done. That's it. There is no way to compromise it. Now, I put out a post that some thought was to do with April Fools, whatever else. VIP 70. If I give a transaction and I send it to the merchant now sends my transaction onto the network. The merchant decides when. If you're going to double spend against me and you do it before I do, I as the merchant detect you. I can do it in milliseconds. If you do it after me, you lose. Here's the thing. You cannot preempt and time something I as the merchant will do with someone on the other side of the earth. There's no need for me to know this because there's no way you can preempt it. You're always after. If I hit the button, you hit it next, you lose. That's why Bitcoin works. No matter what, you lose. The way that this works on this network is each of these nodes send out a hash. It basically pings the other nodes and it self-forms every transaction and every block. There is no routing details. Every single transaction in Bitcoin remodels the network. It then sends. Because of that remodeling, it is optimally efficient. Bitcoin does not scale at all these BS sort of n squared type things and whatever else. When you're talking about miners, Bitcoin is sublinear. Not linear, sublinear. At scale, it grows faster than linear in sort of curving down. It actually gets better the bigger the network is. So that's some of the stuff we're releasing shortly. That's some of the stuff people don't want you to know. Because Raspberry Pi. If I run my Raspberry Pi, I can help the network. Except you don't. Because the miners always get the transaction before you. By the time any Raspberry Pi ever existing on the network has verified a packet, every single miner has decided to mine it or not. Full stop. There is not a single piece of data on the Bitcoin network that has ever been verified by a non-miner. After the fact, yes. Nothing has been broadcast apart from the first user, ever. That's verifiable. You want to trust but verify. Check it. I'll give you the tools later this year. You can sit there and analyze the blockchain and find out when Roger lost money, and I'll pick on Roger again, because he sent a slightly bad packet that was a little bit too big and miners rejected it. Roger lost money because miners found out he did that. Not end user nodes. Miners rejected Roger's packet because they went, beauty, we can take money from Roger. That's why Bitcoin works. We're incentivized not to collude, but to compete. There is no stand around kumbaya circle jerk here. This is competition at its finest. When we remove links in Bitcoin, it doesn't go down. Bitcoin Cash with less nodes and fewer miners right now to stop working needs to have 980 machines nuked to go down. Not one or two. 980, and there's only 1,000 machines. That means basically you have to nuke Africa, Korea, China, let's say everywhere except Antarctica. I haven't actually seen a node running in Antarctica, so maybe you don't nuke that place. The penguins are happy. That's it. So, what we have, we can remove nodes and we're safe. We can have our little tiny Raspberry Pis. Who cares? You can verify if you want, but don't hold back the network for them. One of the projects we've been funding is Terra, which was a company called Locat in Paris. We're not going to do 1000 TPS. I don't give a shit about 1000 TPS. We have run ourselves on a highly controlled, localized, etc., that we can manage and do whatever the hell we want with network, 1,330,000 transactions per second. Not Visa level, not MasterCard level, not cash level. We have now run that, and that's not what we want. I don't want 380 gig blocks. I want anything ever sent on Earth to be included. And that won't be, every block is going to be 1 terabyte, or it won't be right now. It will be as people need it. Here's the thing for you. If you don't want to pay for it on your Raspberry Pi, don't. You don't need to. You're not helping the network. You never have. I know it makes people feel warm and fuzzy to think, I'm running a node, I'm doing good. Sorry, you're not. You're not helping because there's nothing altruistic ever in Bitcoin. Nothing. Bitcoin is money. It is working because it is competitive. It is working because people fight to get their transaction or their block in fast. Why do people put in 100 GBE networks? Why do you think? Because they get a slight advantage. Not a huge advantage, a slight advantage. I used to work with the Australian Stock Exchange. That was one of my first clients when I left back in the 90s and started a firm. We ran up the Nipper network and then high frequency trading. We did close transactions. Some of those were what would be considered massively slow now. We were doing 900 nanosecond transactions. For a stock exchange, that is considered death. The record now for exchange trading is 8 nanoseconds. That's not going to get you around the world. You don't need to be. What we need to do is get a transaction onto the network faster. Hit merchants, hit miners. Now, the argument is, what happens? I give my transaction to the miner, it's signed. What if the merchant doesn't broadcast it? My transaction will never get to the network potentially. So, who here is a merchant? We got some. We got Roger. So, Roger, a question for you, seeing as everyone else wants to be quiet. As a merchant, I hand you my check, which is effectively the Bitcoin transaction. What do you want to do with it?
Broadcast it to everybody so I get paid.
Exactly. There is no vulnerability. As a user, you want the merchant to screw up. If the merchant loses your transaction later, so what? Great. If you're a user, do you care about validating your own transaction? I know Samson will tell you, it's imperative you do. You really don't care. Once you hand the money over, that's it. You're done. As this guy sitting there, that you're paying, he cares. I trust you. Every merchant, everyone who's run a business, I've run companies. You care. You don't sit your checks there in a pile waiting to be cashed. You want them done now. People take daily, hourly check runs, even when they're settling. At the end of the day, how quickly you get your money, the turnover, matters. It's not just how much you earn. Velocity of money in every business is one of the key factors of success. If you run a business, it's not one whether you're profitable, it's profit and turnover. If you don't have turnover and you can't keep it coming in and out, you don't have a business. So the user doesn't need to verify. If I hand you a transaction, I'm the user, I can walk off and not care. The merchant can't steal my change because there's only one way that this merchant steals my change: by not broadcasting the transaction and leaving me with all the money. What an attack! That's the lie. There is no selfish mining. And the next little bit of time, not today, because I have not just a little, but just about nothing left, we're going to pull apart all these myths. I'm sick of them. I'm sick of the complete, utter lies that we've been told about how Bitcoin works. It is not a mesh. It is a near complete graph. I blap out to everyone, just about. What happens and how I do that is, first of all, I send a ping, and every node will respond just that little bit differently. One might be 20 milliseconds away. One might be 120 milliseconds away. And because of that slight differential, every node then realizes, because of the first seen rule, who it needs to send to. And only that. The most powerful nodes send to the most of the network. Why? Because they're miners and they want their transaction fast. It's an incentive system. Don't believe the lies. Bitcoin is incentive compatible. Bitcoin is based on incentives. It is based not on altruism, but by making people earn. That's why it works. So, what we end up with is this thing called a giant component. That's what everyone argues, oh, it's so centralized. It is the least centralized thing in this universe. Right now, Bitcoin, if we even pick on BTC, that they're trying to make a mesh. Vertices, edges. There are something like 12,000 nodes. Everyone talks about the nodes. Nodes do not matter. Edges do. Right now, there are millions of edges. In the Lightning Network, there can never be millions of networks unless there are millions of nodes. 1,000 machines running on BCH is more decentralized than Lightning will be with 1 million nodes. Don't believe me, read. Grab a book on network theory, look up these terms, look up vertice and edge, and I'll be posting a whole lot of math that you can actually look up things about. And you can see what happens. Even if we were to fracture things by specifically targeting everything, Bitcoin doesn't break. Lightning does. If I DDoS a Lightning hub, a central one, I can take down 80% of the network. If I do that, I can fracture it further, and the graph collapses. An attack of 5 machines right now by DDoS could actually fracture and force all the channels to close on something like Lightning. And guess what? You can't fix it. It is a multi-depot traveling salesman problem, which you can look up to. What that means, it's an NP hard, which you've got an option. It's a sort of dichotomy here. If you solve Lightning you've also solved the discrete log problem. What happens if we solve the discrete log problem? Very simple. We don't have public-private key pairs. The only way to make Lightning work, and this is what they don't tell you, is to undo cryptography. If you undo public-private key pairs, you don't have anything. So we need something stable. We need something good. And Bitcoin Cash remains that. We have the power already in the system. We already did. And it's very simple. We don't care. We don't care if you want to run it or not, or if you want to run a node or not. We're going to run it out. This year we're running out things to Africa, we're running out things to South America, and I don't care if others don't think people earning $2 a day or less don't deserve money. We're targeting these people. We want people in Africa to have money. We want people in South America to have money. And we don't care whether you think we can do it, because we're just going to. And we are rolling out something that will scale to not just one transaction every month or whatever it is with Lightning, to 50 a day. Thank you.